So my story starts here, at a simple bus stop. But on the 22nd of April 1993, about 10:30, this bus stop, somewhere that I actually knew very well, there was an incident that happened there that changed my life. Once you reach the peakhood of sort of adulthood, and then you start looking back over the times and things, that experiences that you've had in your younger years, I can definitely guarantee you this. There will come a point where you will realise that you need to say thank you. You need to appreciate or recognise the people that's helped you along your journey to get you where you got to. And for me, the most powerful thing that you all can do, as I said, when you get there, is to turn around and just say thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, and I hope you can hear me. I hope that the microphone's all working. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce the Right Honourable Stuart Lawrence, if I may call you that, richly deserved. I've just had the most inspiring conversation with Stuart. I mean, I just feel so energised, and I've only been in his company for about 4 minutes, so I don't know how we'll all be feeling after 45 minutes or an hour or so. At our school, of course, we've been having a great debate about inclusion, diversity, all stemming from the reactions we had in the community, and very strong reactions, and rightly so, to the events in America that led to our thinking about the Black Lives Matter movement and trying to put inclusion, diversity at the heart of what we're doing, and to think about the effectiveness of what we were doing and what we can do to make it even more effective going forward. And this is the first of a series of lectures that we're organising on this theme. And Stuart is so well placed to talk about these matters. He'll talk to you, I know, about Stephen, so I won't say much about Stephen here because I know Stuart will be doing that. But Stuart is committed to the agenda of inclusion, of diversity, and of tackling inequality in all its forms through his work with the Stuart Lawrence Charitable Trust, and we've just been talking about the foundation that he's working with at the moment. It's also great that Stuart understands schools, because you joined the most noble profession, which is that of teaching. And although Stuart isn't teaching formally at the moment, of course, every day, all the time, he's teaching all of us through his actions and deeds. So, Stuart, you are more than welcome to our school, and let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here. I was just explaining to someone, this is only the 6th time that I've left my house to come and to go to work, so to speak, since lockdown. So I'm really happy to be here. And I usually start with this slide here, because, like your headmaster was just saying, I'm a school teacher by trade. That's the most amount of time I've spent doing the most of things in my life so far, which is teaching and education. And I came across this quote about education and how it can be used as a powerful weapon for you to use the information and the knowledge that you have to go ahead and change the world. I'll stand from this side here. I usually start with these because people sort of ask their questions like, why did he come to talk to us for? Who's he? Like, he's not really that important. Don't know who he is. And I usually start with here. You know, I've met some famous people along my journey here, and for me, I always say to people, yes, it's great that I've met these people. It's great that, you know, I've got to spoken to them and maybe share some ideas with all these people. But for me, you have to know this about me. People are just people. You know, this gentleman here, he's just a person. A very tall person, very polite person. You know, someone that's had maybe more access and privilege than I've ever had, but he's still a person. And I also like to do this as well, to try and keep people's attention. So I like to run a little prize, and I've got some little goodies here that I'll give out afterwards. And I'm going to leave these words on the board here, and at the end, I will be asking if you can remember these words. And these words will hopefully come up throughout my presentation today and as I speak to you, but they will disappear in the next sort of 5 seconds. So my story starts here, at a simple bus stop. Anyone took the bus here to school today? A few people. Yeah, I take the bus all the time. And for me, This is a bus stop that I don't frequent much anymore. It's a bus stop as in my younger years. I always was there. You know, I was saying to one of the teachers, my friend lived 100 metres from this bus stop. Every Friday and Saturday night, from the age of about 13, 14, we used to go around his house, have a little party, a little get together. You know how you do as teenagers, just enjoying yourself. And I used to walk from my house, which was about 20 minutes from here. And I used to walk down, there's a hill that goes further up the road, all the way up the road here. And I used to walk down the hill Friday nights with me and my next door neighbour, Stephen Randall. And yeah, just enjoyed life. But on the 22nd of April, 1993, about 10:30, this bus stop, somewhere that I actually knew very well, there was an incident that happened there that changed my life. That incident was my brother being murdered. 6 guys. No reasoning, no rhyme, just came out of anywhere, shouted, "Oi, N-words, what are you doing?" Now, my brother was the type of person that believed, if I've not done nothing wrong, if I've not caused no trouble, then why am I running for? He was with someone at the time, one of his friends. And he said to him, "Stephen, let's run. And he ran. Now I know why my brother never ran. I wish he did, but I know why he didn't. This is because of the way that my parents brought me up and brought my brother up and brought my sister up. My mum and dad are from Jamaica. My dad came over here in the late 1960s. My mum came over here in the early 1960s. And this is mostly what they know. And I always ask myself this question. I've always asked my dad, like, why did you come and stay? It must have been very cold coming from such a hot country. But he came on a promise that here was a better opportunity for him and for whatever family he had here. Mum and dad met over here. They got married. They had 3 kids. And we lived life of very much strict rules of Christian background and a Christian upbringing. So I went to church every Sunday from the age of, as far back as I can remember, right up to the age of about 17, 18, every Sunday without fail. My brother as well, we all used to go to church. The only person that didn't go to church, used to church, was my dad. My dad was painting and decorating, worked 6 days a week, so therefore Sundays was the only day he had off. So he never used to go to church, but we always used to go to church. Real Christian background, real Christian beliefs that, you know, whoever or whatever you did, then that's what you should receive back. So my mum and dad always used to tell us, treat other people like how you'd like to be treated. And from doing these talks and from studying and from finding out, that rule, the golden rule of life, is in every culture, in every religion, in every society around the world. There's some element of that. Treat others how you like to be treated, treat their neighbour like how you'd like to be treated yourself. It's in every religion I've looked at. So for me, in my head, I've always not understood that if that's something that the world has an understanding of, why can that not be number one pillar in our lives? If that was the only thing that we knew and understood, surely the world would be in a better place than it is now. Which brought me to here, really. And I was 16 at the time that we lost Stephen. I was a few months away from doing my GCSEs. April 23rd, about 7:30, I got up. I put my school uniform on, went downstairs, had my breakfast, and I got myself ready to go to school. The next day. The driving motivation force for doing that was simple for me, and has always been simple for me from going forward. Is the question I always ask myself whenever I find it a bit hard, the question I always ask myself when I just feel like I can't do something and I'm a bit of a failure and I can't really do something. my main driving and motivational force is the question I always ask myself, which is, what would Stephen want me to do? What would Stephen expect me to do? Now, I only had 18 years with my brother, but he was the typical big brother. I don't know if anyone's got any older siblings here, you know, how annoying they are. They're super good at everything, you know. That person was my brother. In fact, it was so bad that the first secondary school that I went to, I only lasted 1 year because all the teachers were like, oh, you're not like Stephen, are you? You're not really good. And I used to feel like, well, I'm not Stephen, and I know I'm not ever going to be as good as him. And that really affected me in my year 7. And I had to move school because I just couldn't deal with it. Because I wasn't Stephen. I was never going to be as good as Stephen at anything. But Stephen didn't do it to be annoying. He was just doing what any older sibling would do, or should be doing, which is to set the example for the younger ones to know that this is what's expected of you. This is what you can achieve yourself if you put your mind to it, if you dedicate yourself. Which comes back to this point here about success and failure. And, you know, 2018, I stopped teaching, and I really sort of had to look at myself and wonder what I was going to do next. I've been teaching for 15 years in the same school, just around the corner from here, and I was lost, and I was just like, what's the point of all this? What's going to go on? And I asked myself this question, you know, what does success look like? Because I remembered as a child what I thought success was. And for me, my idea of success now was different from my childhood. So as a child, I remember just about to finish school, this was before Stephen, thinking to myself, my headmaster was a big burly ex-rugby player. I went to an all-boys school after going to the school that Steve went to, and he was really a guy that was feared. You could hear him clicking around the hallways before he came, and we'd all sort of have to sort of straighten ourselves up and make sure he wasn't messing around when he came. And I always thought to myself, one day, when I become an adult and I've made it, I'm going to pull back up into my school, convertible car, music blaring, outside his office, give it someone the horn and say, ha, Mr. McCarthy, I made it. I did it. I've become a success. That's in my head as a child what I thought was success. And that's what I was sort of always revering myself towards. And then after Stephen and after college and university and work and everything, I just thought to myself, what does it really look like? What is it really? And for me, it boiled down to this: family. Family. Love them, hate them. You know, my sister, oh my gosh, if I could tell you about my little sister. But she's family. She's, I'd do anything for her. And it sort of made me realise that spending time with my family, for me, was a success. You know, I've got my own little immediate family now. I've got married and I've got my little child. That little immediate family, love that. Then my wider family. And in fact, do me a favour right now, okay? I want everyone to close their eyes, okay? I want everyone to think of one person. Doesn't have to be a family member, maybe it's a friend. Someone that, you know, is the best person, that you had the best time with, you know, they just get you, and yeah, the world seems a lot better when you're with them. And I really want you to think and hold that person in your mind. Then I want you to think about the feeling when you're with them that it gives you at the pit of your stomach. You know, that feeling of pure happiness and joy, and just how time just disappears and you can laugh and joke about the silliest things and no one else seems to get it. Now, just for a second, just for 1 second, imagine that person's not there no more. Imagine that you can't have that feeling, that conversation, those little jokes that you have, those little interactions that only you and that other person have. Because I'm afraid to say, that's what I've been robbed of. That's what I've been robbed of. Those little moments that me and Stephen have together that no one else knows about. and how I should be able to now, as a 40-year-old, share the experience of life with my brother, and to share that experience of having my own child with him and him having his own children with him. That's what I've been robbed of. And the reason why I'm sharing that with you all today now is because I want you to know and understand that the fragility of life is nothing but a hair's breadth. This moment that we have here today, which I'm really grateful for. I am so grateful that I'm here today and I'm able to share just a little bit of my own personal story with you, and in the hope that one person, just one person, makes a small difference and change in their lives. And then in that hope, that one person has the power, has the influence, has the knowledge, has the ability to pass that on to someone else. That's how we ensure that the world is a better place. It just takes one person. Which takes me on to this next thing called happiness. And I've just did a webinar with something called the Kind Fest. Last week, Friday, was World Kindness Day. And I took part in the youth area because I'm all about, we've just been talking to someone about history and about time, about generations. I'm all about people behind me. I want to affect and to talk to and to change their mindsets of people behind me that are younger in age. The people who are ahead of me in age, and yeah, I can't go there, because the reason why I go around to schools, the reason why I share my story is that the thought and notion that I'm not going to be here forever, and the environment and the world that I leave behind is for my own child to be in. And I never want that environment or that world to be a place where he's going to have to second guess himself or a situation because of the colour of his skin. So it's for me to share, to get my knowledge, to educate, to learn, to pass on to others what I know, which will give me great happiness. Really will give me great happiness. The same happiness that we just talked about, that pit in the stomach sort of thing. Because time, the one thing in the world that even the richest people in the world, interesting little fact, I just a little side note, and I promise I won't side note too much, but interesting fact that I learned the other day. There are 5 families, UK families, in this country that have more money than 13 million people in this country. 5 families, net worth, more than 13 million people. And even those 5 families, with all that wealth, cannot control the one thing that we all would love to be able to control, which is time. Be able to pause it, to go back in time, be able to pause it and go forward in time, find out bits of destination. But we can't. So therefore, every day, every minute, every hour is precious. And me being able to dictate the things I do with my own time is the most precious thing for me. And be able to spend time with my family, to be able to go and watch my son do sports at school, and to go and watch his school performance at plays. All those things are super precious to me, to be able to say that I can go and do. This one here, we just talked about it. It's not a bad thing, it's what we do with it that's important for me. Because it's a necessary thing that we all need to have. And these other 2 things, I'm sure that we can come back and talk to about another time, which is football and futsal. So I spoke about myself now, and here comes the challenge for you all. We live in a society, in a world where we are all striving for this thing called greatness, and to be the greatest and to be the best. The first thing I'm going to say to you now, competition The biggest competitor that you should have is yourself. The biggest competitor you should have is yourself. You know yourself whether you can either be the best you can be or not so great. You know, we all can procrastinate. We all can be on our phones a bit longer and watch that extra series on Netflix rather than do a piece of homework. We all could, you know, speak on the phone or rather than pick up the book and read. Another interesting side note. Bill Gates, richest man, one of the richest men in the world. He spends 2 weeks of his life by himself just reading. 2 weeks. He's got a little wood cabin, takes a little private plane there, goes to water, absolute silence, has a bag of books, and he then has deliveries that come that bring him more books and more food, I think, during that time. But that's all he does. He's married, he's got kids, but they don't come, they're not allowed to come. That's just his time. And I always ask myself, if Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the world, they said if he stacked his money in dollar bills, it'd be taller than the Empire State Building. Don't know if many people have been to the Empire State Building, but that's a mighty high building. I've been there. It's huge. And that's a ridiculousness factor for me to even think about. But if he can do it, 2 weeks, why are we not all reading a bit more? Why are we not all taking that time for ourselves, to better ourselves? Could be something in that. The second thing that we're going to talk about, giving up and controlling and monitoring, is those devices. Did you also know Bill Gates monitors and controls the amount of time his own kids use electronic devices? The guy who invented them, come up with the concept, app Windows, runs programs, made all his money from, controls the amount of time his own kids use electronic devices. Again, that should tell us something. So, by giving up these things, by freeing up our time, what are we going to do with it? Well, like I said, you should invest in yourself. You should better yourself. You should make sure that you are the best you can be. I'm going to skip past that one, and I'm going to go to my burger chat. So, in my time of teaching, I had one head of department who used to get all the year 11 girls, year 10 girls, all the A-level students, and put them all in a big room where we sit down and talk to them about coursework and deadlines and expectations, etc., etc. And he used to finish by saying this statement here: someone needs to flip the burgers. One of you in here, you're going to be flipping my burgers. I'm going to drive around McDonald's. I'm going to see you in 5 years' time, not amount to much, flipping burgers. I just think to myself, wow, it's a bit harsh. That's a bit extreme, really, to be sort of a way to inspire them. So I don't think you really get to them by saying things like that, But then after a while, and as I said, once I started doing these talks, I realised something, that people are going to say things about you. People are going to put you in boxes and say, I have this expectation of you. I think this about you. But that's all it is. It's just their point of view. And that point of view doesn't define you as a person, because I worked at McDonald's. I was the person flipping burgers. That was my very first job. It didn't define me. It wasn't my greatest calling, and that's where I decided I was just going to do that. No, but that job helped me gain an understanding of life, about working and earning money and contributing and having to deal with people who were drunk on a Friday night that used to come in and ask for a strawberry milkshake, and having to be a little smile on my face and to think that's quite normal on a Friday night to drink a cold strawberry milkshake. But if that's what they wanted, then hey, that's what I was there to do. But that job, working at McDonald's, I worked there for 2 years, gave me my next job, which is the job that everyone wanted to do when I was a kid, which was working in a sports shop. I worked on Oxford Street, like JD Sports, Oxford Street. Like, I worked there for a year. from there, I worked in Selfridges for a couple of years as well. And from there, it then perpetuated myself to all the jobs that I then had on. And that was one of the proudest things I used to put on there, that I used to work at McDonald's. And everyone, did you know the 2012 volunteers, their training was done by McDonald's, because it's revealed to know that customer service and looking after people and that notion is the best in the world. So again, you should never ever let people's perceptions of where you might end up define your life. It doesn't have to be. It can just be a part of your journey. It could be a starting point. It doesn't have to be the end of it all. And here, this one is quite important. So part of the things that we've done since losing Stephen is we set up a trust, and we've now set up a foundation as well. The trust was set up because Stephen wanted to be an architect student. He did some work experience at 16, and it really just changed his life. He went and worked for 2 weeks at an architecture firm with a guy called Arthur Timothy, who gave him an insight of what it could be like to be an architect. And that was it. He was set. That's what he wanted to do. And if you ever get a chance to go to the centre, some of his drawings are on the wall, some of the stuff that he did. And again, like anything he tried to do, he's really good at. Like all his drawings are amazing. Like it was just the kind of kid he was. So after Stephen died and he wasn't able to fulfill his dream of being an architect, we decided as a family that we was going to set up a trust, and the trust was going to enable other students to become architects. And so far, bursary and grants wise, we've given out over 100 bursaries and grants to different students. Now it takes 7 years to become an architect. We've got 25 students who have qualified because of the grants and the support they've been given by the Stephen Lawrence Research Centre. Out of those 25, 5 of them started their own practices, and 3 of them have made buildings around the world. And as a family, that legacy that we've been able to have is what gives us comfort, which gives us that knowledge and thought that Stephen didn't just die and that was it. We was able to use that as a momentum to push ourselves forward, to make difference in someone else's life. And in 2018, the London Marathon said that they were going to put a competition on for Year 1 students. Now, this was unheard of, because usually, as a Year 1 architecture student, that's after 3 years, or sort of part 1 to architecture after 3 years, you don't really get to do much. You're on the sort of discovery stage of being an architect, so learning about materials and components and infrastructure and those sort of things. So London Marathon decided to put a competition on, and it was to design an 18-mile marker along the marathon route. And I went down to support the people who won. And the first set of runners that came through were the disability runners. And I saw this. And it really made me think. It really made me think, like, what an amazing thing this woman here is doing. This gentleman here, got sunglasses, he's blind. But this woman here, look at the smile on her face. She is enabling this gentleman to fulfill his dream, aspiration, a want, a need, or something that he had or said that he wanted to do. Now, that's 26 miles plus that this young lady is going to have to put herself through to enable this gentleman here to fulfill something he really wants to do. Now, it doesn't look like it's something that's a task or she wants anything out of it. In fact, she looks quite happy that she's enabling him to do that. But then that started to make me think about teachers and my role as a teacher. That's what we do as teachers. We enable students to reach their destination, to reach their goals. And as much as people say, oh yeah, but it's your job. Okay, cool, yeah, it's your job. But the lunch times, the after schools, the bits that you guys don't see where at home, before school, after school, they're thinking about how they're going to enable you to reach your destinations and your goals. And whatever they may be, because they're all different. You've all got different aspirations. You all want different little things. And all those extra bits of time that they give, and all those extra bits of help, and all those extra bits of knowledge that they see you in a hallway, and they say, "Oh, what about that?" And they're encouraging you. And it does feel like sometimes, I know because I can remember, it does feel like sometimes they're on your back. I know it sometimes feels like they're having a go. But I just want to remind you all that it's not. If they didn't speak to you about it, if they didn't talk to you about it, then surely that means they don't really care. And I know from going through and being a teacher myself that that's all they do. They care. There is no such thing as a bonus when all the students reach their potential grades. No one gets overtime if they give up all their lunch breaks or spend more time after school. And that's all enabling to help you all to reach your destination. The most powerful thing that you all can do, once you get to your destinations, once wherever you get to, wherever you want to go to, whatever stage you get into your life, once you reach the peakhood of sort of adulthood, and then you start looking back over the times and the things, that experiences that you've had in your younger years, I can definitely guarantee you this. There will come a point where you'll realise that you need to say thank you. You need to appreciate or recognise the people that's helped you along your journey to get you where you've got to. Because no one will do it by themselves. There will be people throughout that journey that will help you and aid you and propel you and push you and support you at different points. And for me, the most powerful thing that you all can do, as I said, when you get there, is to turn around and just say thank you and appreciate. And usually those things start with your parents. I remember at 22, when I just finished university, that I had to phone my mum. It just dawned to me that the amount of times I used to phone her and say to her, I'm broke, I've got no money, this is a problem. And she wouldn't complain, she would just sort it out and fix it for me. I always knew that I had that support network and that safety net there for myself. And when I realised that, I had to phone and just say, do you know what, I'm really thankful for all those times, doesn't matter what time of the night or what time of the morning it was, and you was there for me and got me through my degree. Thank you. That is so powerful, just to say thank you. And especially to those teachers. I'm in a big sort of hunt at the moment to go back through my own secondary school teachers, college, university. I still talk to some of my university professors now because they helped me. And I've got to say thank you. Which brings me to the end. So thank you for your ears, and I appreciate the time. And as I said, I do hope that if I could leave you with two things, it would be this. The first thing is that I was speaking to some young ladies outside, and I found out recently that empathy, with all that's going on at the moment, empathy, someone said this, empathy is the highest form of intelligence. And I thought to myself, it's not the highest form of intelligence, surely not. There must be some sort of higher realm than that. But then when you think of the concept or the principle of being empathetic, so those other people's feelings, putting yourself in someone else's shoes and trying to imagine what it could be like for them. It is the highest form of intelligence because it means that I always have to be developing, I always have to be thinking, I always have to push myself forward, I always have to know and understand that I'm not the finished article and someone else can say something to me and something that I may have thought for years may be destroyed in seconds. And be open to that. And the second thing I'm going to leave you is this. Hard work will beat talent when talent doesn't work hard. This is my mantra for my son. He loves football, thinks he's the next Lionel Messi. Tell him all the time. Yeah, you've got a skill, but there's other people who want it more than you do. And what's going to happen when they surpass you? What are you going to do? You've got to work at it every day. You've got to try every day. You've got to practice every day. You can't rely on that little bit of talent that you do think you've got now and think that no one's going to pass you. If you can live your life by that mantra, then the successes will be the stars for me as far as I'm concerned for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stuart. We have a bit of time for questions, if you're happy
Yeah, sure,
to
definitely.
take them.
Love a question.
I hope I'm beaming out to the school. I did put a channel in the student team for any of you out there to put any questions. I can't see any questions at the moment, but I have my phone. So if you in your form rooms at the moment want to think about some questions that you might want to pose and put those on. Now we do have some girls in the audience. Do any of you have any questions that you would like to ask Stuart?
Yes. Can I just have your name? Sorry, as well. Hi.
If you were to find out more about what happened, like, where should you look?
What happens about Stephen?
Just in general, like what you do.
Okay, cool. So I've got my social media channels up there, but there was some good programs that came on. So there's a good program on BBC iPlayer called Stephen Lawrence, The Murder That Changed the Nation. That's a really great one to watch, and that gives a great understanding about what happened, how it changed things. So, you know, it's something that's gone ahead and changed. So we've changed, laws have been changed. There was something called the Macpherson Report, which then identified establishments and institutions for being institutionally racist, which meant that the systems that had been set up were prejudiced against one group of people and benefited another group of people. So that was brought out in 1999. There were 70 recommendations, 6 of them were for schools. I do believe that most schools have taken on all the recommendations that were given, whereas other establishments haven't taken on the other recommendations to make it a more fairer society. And that's why we still have some of the problems that we still face now, I do believe. Great question. I've got a small prize for you at the end, which then usually generates more questions. That's okay. Young lady? No, sorry, name first. Haven, nice to meet you.
Do you feel like if the circumstances were different and it was someone else who obviously wasn't murdered, do you feel like you would still be doing the same thing that you're doing today?
No, I wouldn't be. No, I wouldn't be. So like I said, so Stephen was, what I try to do when I do my speeches, I don't try to talk about the negativity that happened, because there's a certain amount of anger that goes with that negativity, which then can turn into bitterness, which I don't ever want to be bitter. But I will tell you a few things. So, for instance, Stephen was murdered 1993 at 10:30. There's a telephone box which was about 2 or 3 minutes up the road from where Stephen was first stabbed. His friend made a phone call to the police. The police arrived on scene about 10 minutes afterwards. Now, it was a man and a woman, police officer. They got out. They questioned my brother's friend of what had happened, you know, and he was hysterical, like anyone would be when you're seeing your friend in a pool of blood. Now, they had a first aid kit in the back of the car. Any first aid trainers out here? Okay, cool. So now that you're first aid trained, you know that if you have that knowledge, you've got 2 decisions to make. Obviously, you have the right to say, no, I don't feel confident enough to be able to help this person in this scene, but I may be able to give advice, etc., etc. But you'd think 2 members of the police, whose job it is to serve and protect, that they would think to themselves, I've got a first aid kit, it looks like he's in a bit of trouble, maybe I should take it out the back of the car. Did they take it out the back of the car? No, they didn't. That's the first incident that, for me, makes no sense in my head. No sense. But that will give you a small insight of the mindset of people. 2 black boys, 10:30 at night. Must be up to no good. That's for me, the chain of thoughts that must have happened next. For me, not for them to not think, oh my God, let me help. Second thing that sort of made me sort of also think that there was just something not quite right, which is 2 weeks later. So like I said, I went to school the next day because I was absolutely adamant that someone knew what had happened. Someone knew these people because, like I said, it was an area that I was around all the time. People knew my brother. People knew who we was a family. We wasn't notorious people, but it was a community. We all knew each other. We all went to the same places. We all played the same football teams. We all went to the same clubs together. So we all knew each other. Someone must have known. Went to school. 6 names come up straight away when I went to school the next day. When I came home that evening, there were phone calls, there were letters, the notes pushed through our door of the same 6 names. We presented them to the police. 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, they arrested the boys. And that was only after Nelson Mandela, that we got to meet, came out afterwards and said, oh, I understood that black lives in South Africa never meant much, but I never knew in Great Britain, this great country, that the same would be happening. And just by him saying those few words, the next day, the boys were arrested. So I always say to people all the time, if the police had done their job on the very first night, in the very first couple of weeks, in the very first month, no, you wouldn't. There were 2 other murders, Rohit Dougal and Nathan Adams. And Roland Adams. There were 2 murders before Stephen got killed. You'll never hear them spoken about. Well, A, because they found the people that did them and they got convicted and put away. But the police did their job there. But for some strange reason, like I said, it just wasn't ever done. We're now finding out that the police were spying on us as a family. We are not the crime syndicate family of gangsters that the police believed that we was. I don't understand why they would do that for. But again, it just shows the mindset of the police, of the establishment back in 1993. And again, we're not talking hundreds of years ago. This is 27 years ago now.
Just picking up on that, because we've had a question from Nani, who in the upper 5, who asks about how you view the police. So I suppose kind of thinking about what happened and what has changed. What is your view of the police and the changes that have made? Do you think enough has been done, or do you think more still has to happen?
I think more still needs to happen. So I usually ask the crowd, who wants to be a police officer? Who's thought of that profession in their lives, of an establishment of, I can go and make a difference? And usually when I speak to young people, there isn't that many hands up. I could tell you this story as well. So a year 10 student came to my art class, GCSE class, and she came bouncing in. She went, oh, Mr. Lawrence, I'm going to become a detective sergeant, and I'm going to be the best detective sergeant, and I'm going to change the police force. And I said to her, wow, I didn't think he was like that. And she said to me, oh, Mr. Lawrence, what do you mean you didn't? I just didn't think he was like that. And she's like, no, explain yourself. What do you mean? I was just like, I don't know, I just didn't think he was like that. Within 6 months, she didn't want to become a police officer no more. Now, I cannot let my own mindset, my own prejudice, my own feelings, my own disgruntlement with the police force jade anyone else's, because that's wrong for me. How did I not know she wasn't going to be the light and shining light to go in and change the police force and to buck the trends and to shake things up? It's not right for me to damper down anyone's aspirations. My role as a teacher is to, like we talked about before, is to scaffold, is to support, is to help, is to give knowledge, is to be there for my students, whatever they want to do. And I've now made a conscious effort to find that student, she's in her 20s now, and help her join the police force. Because that's what she told me. My reaction was the wrong reaction. It was. Because it's not for me, that's her. I've got to support hers, and that's what I'm saying. So now I've made a conscious effort to go and find her. I've spoken to her recently. I'm going to help her to become a police officer. That's what she wants to be. I'm going to help her do that. And I'm also now helping and working with the Met Police. My mum always tells me, you cannot be out on the outside throwing stones. You can't be. That's only one perspective. We need people inside throwing out the information to the people who are throwing stones. That's what we need to do. So that the people that are throwing stones are better informed and have better knowledge and understand the way these systems work. So we can use them. The police are there to protect us. They're public servants. Every one of us, they're there for us. They work for us. It's not the other way around. And when you understand the balance of power and understand what they can do and what they can't do, I've got some little booklets that I should give at the end for people, because it's about information. It's about knowledge. The more information and knowledge we have, the more we talk about things, the better we all can become.
I think the upper six, some of the sixth formers are going to be interviewing you afterwards
Yep.
for our podcast, and I think they're going to be grilling you a lot on your ideas about institutionalised racism and how we can tackle that. So I know that a few questions have come up in that light, so I think we'll be looking at that in the podcast. But we've had an interesting question here from Mrs. Evans. What do you think Stephen loved most about you as his brother?
Oh, that's a really good question. And quite a hard question to answer, because I was that typical annoying little brother. I was. I looking back on it now, I know I was. I can tell you this little story. So we both had these Walkmans. It's like a bit like an MP3 player that used to put cassettes in, and mine broke. And in my great knowledge of ingenious, I was like, right, if I can get Stephen's one, if I can take that apart, I can then work out why my one's not working. You can imagine his disgruntlement when he came home and we had 2 piles of these yellow Walkmans just in bits, and I hadn't been able to work out why mine was broken, and now his one was broken as well. So, yeah, what did he love about me most? I suppose the annoyance must have been lovable, that unlovable annoyance thing that I had the same affection for my younger sister, I think, where, you know, yes, she's annoying. Yes, but she's my little sister. And
That was actually another question we had. Did Stephen's death bring you closer to your sister?
I suppose yes and no, because like I said, I was 16 at the time and Georgina was only 11. So she just about started secondary school. And I left home for a year after it all, because my house went from being a very quiet environment to there could be 30, 40 people in my house at one time. You know, I found it really hard to study. So I left home for a bit. And so we didn't quite have that connection. And then I went to university. I moved away from it to university, moved away again. So we are more closer now than after Stephen first died, because again, we went to a sort of protected bubble where my sister was very much, she was driven everywhere. She never got no public transport anywhere. Like, it was just like crazy because there was a lot of fear around the place. But yeah, I'd say not then, but more now. I definitely would say that.
Lexi's asked, do you think gang violence has influenced the way people view knife crime in general? So this is obviously a big issue.
And that's what's so also really upsetting about sort of like from losing Stephen, and then how we are now in the stage where it's talked about that young people are killing young people a lot more. And I think what's happened is there's a bit of hysteria going around, and it's this whole sort of catch-22 thing where if someone else has got a knife, then I need to carry a knife. And if I'm not carrying a knife and they're carrying a knife, then what's going to happen to me? And that's, I think, stirred a lot of this fear. And it comes down to as well how young people need to find boundaries about respecting and understanding people, I think, because yes, it's okay to have a disagreement with someone, but when that disagreement turns into where you're wanting to physically, violently hurt someone, that's when in my mind I'm just like, how far, why have we got that far? Why can we not just say, I dislike that person, I'm going to be over here, they can be over there, and that will be it? Why do we need to hurt people and be physically violent towards someone? You know, my mum always used to say to me, why are you picking up your hand and hitting someone else's child for? Like, that's someone else's child, you shouldn't do that. And that's, again, sort of like one of the things I'd never, I'm not saying I never got into a fight as a child, but of course I lost my mind and did stupid things, but that was the one thing that always used to ring in my mind. Like, my mum always used to say, why are you hitting other people's children for? It's like, but why am I hitting other people's children for? Violence is not the way.
How can we promote that message in a positive way? What can we do?
I think it goes back that thing, it's a bit about empathy again and acceptance that, you know, I just went to your headmaster and you're saying that we're not all different, and it's about your mantra about how you're celebrating people's differences. But I think in that celebrating people's differences and understanding your own differences, that's where it comes a bit confusing, because am I more important than someone else? No, I am not no more important than anyone else. And that's what I tell my son all the time. Like, you are no more important than anyone else. The love I have for you, someone else is not going to have that same love. So why would you want to expect and go around and pretend like you're the big I am? That love I have for you is the love I have for you. You need to be aware that someone else out there loves their child exactly the same amount as I love you, and thinks that they're more important than you. But that in more importance doesn't then mean that it goes into the realm of they're the only one. And I think that's where we start to get a little bit insular, where we're going, it's about me. It's not always about me.
Are we in danger as well in our current climate, where it's so easy to be egoistic
100%.
that
100%.
and you know, kind of feel like things are going wrong, and particularly I know in the sixth form there's been a lot of discussion about social media and algorithms that drive you into particular views.
Definitely.
And you know, what should we as educators be doing to kind of help our students see beyond that?
And that's the whole thing about, you know, monitoring them out the time that we do get into interface with these things. They're a necessary evil. I guarantee you. There are good things on these things as well. But when you know, so that whole social dilemma program is an absolute must watch, because when you understand that they've taken people from the gambling industry that makes things addictive, and then they brought them people across to social media channels. That's now why we've got the endless scroll. They tried to ban that. They tried to ban that because it then means you can't satisfy the need. And it's inbuilt into us that we want to come to the end. You want to come to the end of most things. You can't start something new until you come to the end of something. That's just built in us. So when you start to work out how the human brain, the psyche, and we only use 10% of our brain, and there's parts of our brain we can't tap into, and there's other things that people can tap into our brains to affect us. When you start to understand the gravity of it all, you can then just see that we're being pawns and we're being used. It's a mind-blowing thing. It is. It is. There's a young lady that's got a hand up over there. No.
How has social media affected the Black Lives Matter movement?
And I think Will Smith said it best. It's given us the platform. George Floyd became a sensation because someone streamed it live at the actual time. It was an unfiltered incident that happened that no one then could deniably say, oh, it never happened like that. No, it's the camera angle. No one could do it because it was live streamed while it was happening. That's why social media is a good thing, because it's a platform that we can share and use to disseminate information, and we can talk about things and have that platform, that space to be able to talk and understand, and people to accept and hear people's different points of views. So it's been a good thing. But again, you know, we've just done a campaign for the foundation, and for, you know, the comments on YouTube, we had to turn them off after a while, because out of 839 comments, 39 of them was absolutely disgusting. So, as far as I'm concerned, I just read recently about the Sainsbury's advert. I've seen the new Sainsbury's advert, Black family. Oh, I'm not going to Sainsbury's no more. Why do I need this thrown down my throat? What's been rammed down your throat? What, that black people actually celebrate Christmas as well? That we all get together and do things that everyone else does? Like, I don't understand the detestness about it all, the anguish that people start to... We are 3%, I know that. We are a minority, I know that. But I deserve to be treated exactly like anyone else to be deserved. I pay my taxes. I try to be a good person. I try to make sure my son's a good person. I try to make sure my family's a good person.
So I think we'll go to one final question that kind of links quite nicely onto what you were just saying. And then obviously any other questions that we didn't get a chance to, I think, you know, with the sixth form, we can explore some of those as well. I know there've been lots of really, really great questions. So thank you, girls. When you hear people say racism doesn't exist in the UK like it does in the US, what do you say?
Okay, I say it does, I'm afraid. I did some talks to some Harrow Council, and part of my research, I started with George Floyd, and I was like, well, maybe it doesn't. No, George Floyd, maybe it's an isolated incident. So it's been about 130 days since George Floyd passed away. In this country, we've already had a police officer who's put his knee on a man's neck. And he's legally allowed to do it. It's not an illegal thing to do. If a police officer is in fear of his life, as a last resort, he may do that to restrain someone. The second thing that's also happened since George Floyd, we've had another police officer in this country put a man in a chokehold and say to him, I'm going to choke you out. So people say to me, oh, but the things that happen in America are different over here. No, it doesn't. It finds its way. America has a real habit of doing things, and it sort of finds its way, you know, the 3,000 plus miles across the ocean into England. It happens that it just has that way of happening. And I definitely would say to people this. I discussed with my wife recently, and I said to her, would you want me to discuss on the national forum for the world, would I be the best person to speak about women's problems? No, I wouldn't be. Now, I can guarantee you, ladies, I worked in a girls' school for the last 15 years. Most of my family members are female. I have a great insight into females, but I do not have the inkling of what it's like to be a female. I can have thoughts, I can read, I can speak to other people, I can hear, I can listen, but to be an actual notion of what it's like, no, I can't. And it's exactly like my lived experience of being a black person. I never knew racism until I was 16, really. You know, I did have a picture of me at school. When I went to secondary school, in my class, there was 2 black kids, a mixed race kid, and the rest of the kids were white. Never had it as a problem. No one ever said to me, oh, you black this, or black. Never had that. It wasn't until Stephen was murdered, then I realised, oh wow, some people are going to look at me, some people are going to treat me and think that I'm different just because my skin colour is a bit different. But I'm not. I'm a human being first, and we are all human beings first, and we all breathe air. We all have blood running through our systems that we need to survive. This is just an outer shell. What my heart and what my soul believes, what my brain believes is what most human. I just want to be treated like everyone else. I am like everyone else, am I not? That's the way I see it.
Sure. Thank you very, very much.
Badges for the people that ask questions. So I've last thing to leave. I do have a mantra which is nice to be nice.
And if you leave me some of the badges, then I can make sure that some of the girls that got their questions online.
So I shall leave those. And I just think my thing about this is it's just so nice to be nice to people. And I'm not asking people to run around and making sure they open doors for people because it's nice. You will know the time where someone needs your help, and you just have to be nice and do something different for them. So I'll leave those with Miss as well.
All right. Well, I'm going to just say a few words, if I may. For those of you, obviously, that were in the school last summer, I know that for many of us, particularly in the sixth form, we've been on a journey together. And, after George Floyd was killed, many of you wrote to me and Dr. Chania and other members of the senior leadership team and wrote in such a way that, really made me open my eyes as to what we were doing, and also understand that we weren't necessarily getting it right. We do lots of things really, really well at school, but I understood that if there was any one of you that didn't feel in any way valued in the same way or heard or seen, then that was a problem. And I know I've had lots of discussions with many of you, and we're working together, and this lecture series is a big part of that. And obviously to have Stuart to be our first speaker is amazing, and I'm going to come back to just a few points that he brought up in particular. But it's more than about getting people to come in and speak to you all. I mean, it's fantastic. They're great role models. They can give you new ideas to think about. But we as a school need to do more. And I want to just let you know that as part of the senior leadership team, I'm working with other people, other senior leaders across the GDST on a programme called Undivided. And we are looking at all of our schools, what we do, what's good, what's maybe not so good, and how we can change our cultures to ensure that every single one of our community feels valued, feels seen, feels heard, and that's really, really important. But I want to ask for your patience, because these things don't come about quickly, and if we want change to be good and we want change to be meaningful, then it has to be done in that right way. And I would really urge any of you who have any thoughts or ideas or concerns to come and speak to me about it, because this is what I'm involved with at the moment. I'm doing lots of thinking. So I want to thank Stuart for two things, really. Firstly, for today's lecture, utterly inspiring. I know it will have really energised so many of you. I think I've written down just a few snippets of the things that I'm going to say. Education is the most powerful tool, obviously, definitely. Treat everyone like you want to be treated. I think that is so important. And I do think that's something that we as a school community do so well. Say thank you, I think, is so important. And then finally, this idea of if we can just make an impact on what one person is thinking, that one person can change someone else, and then that can be the ripple effect that makes the difference for other people that you might not have ever meet in your life, but what one act, one change of thought. And the second thing, I've just been so privileged to have conversations with you leading up into this session, and we've spent quite a lot of time talking about ideas, and it's just helped me understand myself as a woman of white privilege. I have never ever had to think about my race and think about it as something that has impeded or might impede me. So for me to have that realisation, I think is so important, and to share that with you, and to give me that empathy, because I won't ever truly understand that. I can't truly understand that in the way that you can't truly understand the issues faced, what it's like being a woman. But I can have the empathy and I can have the understanding, and it's through that discussion that we have as a school community, and we are so lucky to be able to have that discussion, and it's that discussion that needs to continue. So thank you so much for listening, girls. Thank you so much, teachers, for giving up your time in lessons. You're going to go off to your Kinder sessions. I'm going to see, Stuart and I are going to head up to see some of the sixth formers now for him to be grilled even further. And as I said, we will try and get some of those questions that we didn't quite get to in that podcast. This is an initiative that's come out from some of the sixth formers. We're hoping to get our first podcast out to you by the end of term, and Stuart is our first interviewee. So thank you very much, ladies. Enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.